All right, welcome to part two. Actually, I really didn't do a proper ending to part one like I normally do, but here we are. I will say, one thing that I usually end the podcast with, like with part one, we love our subscribers. We appreciate all the likes, all the views. Please subscribe and leave us comments. We love it. So, on to part two, where Verily is going to talk about her very interesting job.
So again, where are you working now?
I work for the district attorney's office in Farmington, New Mexico.
And so how many assistant DAs are there?
In our district, we have about 15 and 4 of them
okay.
are women. So
Oh, really? 4? I mean, honestly, that's is that good? That sounds.
Is it a male dominated industry or profession?
It is. It's getting a little more 50-50. But there's still like this old school, like old boys kind of vibe to the law. Like
Really?
I've been in front of judges before that have told me kind of flat out, like, I don't take this from women or I don't take that from women and things like that. So
Wow.
It's really interesting that
I'm telling
way.
you, I loved watching the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial and watching Amber Heard get just cross-examined by what was her name?
Camille Velasquez, I think.
Yeah, she was amazing. She was
Yeah,
really good.
I didn't get to watch much of the trial. I
Oh.
should have watched more of it.
You know how the meme goes. Johnny Depp's, got his hands up in the air. First guy that's ever won an argument against a woman.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, yeah, but the snippets of that trial that I watched, it was like, oh my gosh, this woman is ridiculous. Like, just telling lie after lie after lie. And I thought it was interesting, like her cross-examination technique, because I don't know, I typically don't want to argue with the witness that much on cross-examination. I want to let their answers kind of speak for themselves. And sometimes in trial advocacy, we talk about, not asking that one question too many, because sometimes you just want to like leave it and just let the jury like understand, like, yeah, this is what they mean. But she was like kind of openly arguing with Amber Heard at times, and I thought that was very interesting.
There was lots of rumors that she had a thing for Johnny.
Oh yeah, I saw that circulating around, but I think that's just because she's attractive and powerful.
I was gonna say they're both really hot, and I think that was
well, there was some touching and some hugging and some things going on. But that's neither here nor there. Okay, so I have a curious question to go back to, it being a boys club. Did you have a specific experience where, because I was curious, did you know going into this profession that it was male dominated, that it was a kind of an old boys club, or whatever you call it? And was there a moment where you're like, oh, I'm not welcome here?
Going in, I don't think I ever like sat down and thought like, oh, maybe this is a profession where I might not be.
I would have never thought of it
equally.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have thought that was, maybe it's a Hollywood, Hollywood. Watching all the shows, it didn't seem like it was just all guys.
Like women have only been going to law school for probably 70 or 80 years. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg went to law school, I think there were 3 or 4 women who were allowed to go in her class. And she was on the Supreme Court as recently as 2 years ago. So
right.
It is still, and I think in a lot of rural areas it's worse. Just a very kind of male dominated profession. And it's not always overtly sexist. It's sometimes kind of covertly sexist, because like I've had experiences where like my supervisor will walk into a male counterpart's office like across from mine and give him some advice about how to move his career along, or how to like make nice with the boss or something like that, and then walk into my office and tell me something totally unrelated, not bring up the, nice career advice you just gave that other guy.
What about like secret golf outings that you don't
Oh
get?
yeah, they go golfing all the time. I've actually considered taking golf lessons because I feel like my networking ability in the legal profession is hindered by the fact that I don't golf.
I've heard that from many women. Yes.
George Carlin addresses that about, how golf is an avenue for white rich men to get together and enrich each other.
Yeah.
So what kind of, like, are you assigned cases geographically, or do you have a certain type of case that you take, or
Good
how
question.
does that work?
Both. So we prosecute crime. Our district is just San Juan County, New Mexico. So it's the very north west corner of New Mexico.
Okay.
And that's our district. Some districts in New Mexico have more than one county, but ours just has the one.
Are there any towns we would have heard of in that area?
Farmington's the biggest town.
Okay. I've heard of Farmington,
we're right
New
next.
Mexico.
Yeah, Farmington, New Mexico. I live in Aztec. The Shiprock is nearby, and like Monument Valley and that area, and like the Four Corners Monument and things like that.
Sure.
So we're close to that. I'm like 40 minutes from Durango, Colorado.
Where is most of the meth made?
Well,
was that an eye roll? Did I annoy you a little bit?
No.
There's meth everywhere. I don't know why. It's just because they made one little show.
Everywhere. Yeah. Meth is everywhere. But yeah, the Breaking Bad thing, that's what people know New Mexico for. And actually, at the
first time I've heard of the town.
At the time that Breaking Bad was popular, meth wasn't even the biggest drug in New Mexico. Black tar heroin was our worst problem.
Yeah. Heroin's a big problem in Indiana.
Yeah. And like black tar was our worst problem. And, meth was just like kind of on the radar. But now everyone associates us with meth. Like, New Mexico, you must have so much meth.
Right. So you do have a specific little slice of the county?
No, so like we prosecute crimes countywide as long as it's not on reservation land. We don't have jurisdiction over Native American land.
Oh man, sometimes I wish I was Native American.
Yeah, it's a real illustrious past you got there. And they've been treated really well.
They can get away like now though. I mean, you don't want to get pulled up. What's crazy here is we have tribal police that go over state boundaries, and they can pull you over in Michigan, they can pull you over in Indiana, because their tribal area covers both areas, and they'll just pull you over for anything they want. You don't ever want to get pulled over by tribal police ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should be more careful when I'm driving through some of the pueblos and stuff that I drive through, because they can pull you over, and I don't really want to have to go to court in wherever, like when I'm driving to Cuba to drop off my kids. So anyway, I have a particular area of crime that I prosecute right now. So I worked for the DA's office before, and when I was there, I did mostly DWIs, and then they gave me special prosecutions. So I did all probation violations, all extraditions. I did these civil commitments where I committed people to the hospital if they were, crazy.
Extradition.
That's going to another location.
I know what it means, jackass.
That wasn't.
They were mostly people that we picked up in our county, and they needed to go somewhere else. I had this one guy. He needed to go back to Maricopa County, Arizona, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah,
jail
the pink jumpsuits. The sheriff
the pink jumpsuits and the tent city or whatever he has.
Yeah, I know things.
Yeah, and they get 2 meals a day there, and they're like peanut butter and bread only.
The guy's
really rough.
Yeah, and so
what was that sheriff's name? That was
Arpaio.
Oh, I'm like,
he was the sheriff. I mean, before and after, but I lived there when he was there, and oh my gosh, my dad would send me messages about how much he loved Sheriff Arpaio because he was such a horrible human being, I guess.
But like this guy, he had to go back to Arizona, and he told the judge on the record, he was like, "Judge, I just wanted to say, I really enjoyed your jail. I had green chili enchiladas for lunch today, and it was really good."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, he's such a nice rapist."
So, wow. Real quick, let's not to change gears too much, but what did you think about Steve's just nonsensical rant about hating the police?
I didn't think it was nonsensical. I thought it made perfect sense.
I'm kind of two minds with it because, like, I see both sides like every day in my job. Like, I've worked with police that are almost, they would be defendants if they didn't have a badge, and who do things that are not legal and they don't follow the law. Like I was telling Tony that I had a DWI case once, where the police were called out for a domestic violence call. They go to the house. The guy is there. He's standing up in the bed of his truck. They go and they talk to the woman. The woman says he just pulled up and that he had been drinking. So they start talking to the guy. They ask him to do field sobriety tests. He refuses to do field sobriety tests, so they arrest him. I'm like, why did you arrest this guy? He wasn't driving. He
drinking
was
while standing.
Yeah, he was drinking. He was drunk, but he was standing in the back of his truck. That's not illegal, And so it's things like that bother me. So I have had police that I've seen that don't follow the law and don't seem to care. And then when we try to explain to them, like, hey, I can't prosecute this for A, B, and C reason, they get belligerent with us because they don't like the fact that we're not gonna, put this guy in jail for 10 years or something. And that we can't do that because it's not, upholding justice. Like I say all the time, my job is not to get convictions. My job is to do justice. So whatever that looks like, I do mostly domestic violence cases now. The majority of victims in domestic violence cases do not want to cooperate with us.
Oh, that's
because horrible. You have children together and your money is together.
Right. I was going to say, yeah, he's not making any money if he's in jail
with that person. And so the majority of the time, probably 98% of the time, my victims are uncooperative. But I tell them, I'm like, hey, what can we do to try to make sure that you guys don't come back into the system? Does your spouse need anger management? Would you benefit from some?
Wow, they go that far to get people all that help.
Yeah, like anger management, drug treatment.
Oh, that's amazing.
Alcohol treatment, those types of things.
It's kind of a silver lining.
Yeah, like most cases, especially the ones that I prosecute, are not going to go to trial. And so I try to make sure that these people don't come back into the system. Sometimes they still do, because we've got serial batterers. Like sometimes both parties will be arrested and then I get both cases and I'm like, well, how am I supposed to talk to this victim if they're also a defendant?
How many cases have you had where the woman beat up the man?
Oh, I get those a lot. I'd probably say those are probably 35 or 40% of my cases, of my caseload.
Wow, way more than I thought.
Yeah. Like the men are way less likely to participate.
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah, like women, we can sometimes, convince them like, hey, he's done this like 10 times. Don't you want to, see him have some consequences now? And a lot of times they'll agree, but the men are almost always like, no. And usually the ones that want to participate are not the ones you want to have testify at trial.
Right.
So can I ask, and it's okay if you can't answer, what's the worst case?
No, hold on. I'm sorry, Tony.
That's okay.
She said she was of two minds and I got the one mind regarding my situation, but I want to hear the other mind.
Well, the other mind is like, I do work with a lot of great police officers that are, that do their job, that follow their training. I had a case recently, it's still pending, but it's a aggravated assault of a police officer and 2 resisting charges and a couple of other things. And I watched the video on it. This police officer is about 5'5", 5'6", and maybe like $150. and the defendant is like well over 6 feet tall and probably like 350 pounds. And so the defendant was like very obviously lunging at the officer, trying to like, you know, threaten him and stuff, and calling him a bitch and all this stuff. And first the
Earmuffs,
officer
everybody.
first the officer deploys his mace, and it actually backfired and like blew back in the officer's face.
Oh no.
I felt bad for it.
Oh, that poor guy.
No.
It didn't get the defendant like hardly
Literally
at all.
bounces off his belly right into his
Yeah,
eyes.
it's just like right back in his face. So he's like wiping his eyes. Then he takes out his taser because the guy's still coming at him. He deploys the taser. It doesn't work the first time. The electrodes don't like meet it.
Stick into the fat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, they don't get in there. And so the guy, you know, didn't do anything. And so once he kept going, he deployed the taser again, and that finally brought him down. But I was very proud of this officer, because I'm like, this situation could have gotten really ugly really fast. And he de-escalated it in a proper way. You know, he didn't want to hurt anybody. There were bystanders there as well. Like the guy's mother and sister were off at the side. So he tried to make sure the bystanders were safe. He was trying to talk to the guy. He was trying to de-escalate in any way he could think of. And, you know, he used the least amount of force possible. And I was very proud of that officer, you know, that day, because he could have very easily shot that guy.
Sure.
And I think it would have been very tragic. And so I think that there are a lot of good officers that try really hard. And I know that the emotions of being in a situation like that sometimes get to them. Like,
how do you think an officer really feels about being told no?
I think it depends on the officer.
Right.
Because I've seen video where sometimes, you know, the officer is told no, and then the officer's just like, meh, okay. And then I've seen other cases where it escalates, you know.
What about when they're told, if asked a question, if they are in fact the stupidest police officers in the city?
That did happen.
Most of the time, the officers that I know, they let that stuff roll off their back, and they're just kind of like, oh yeah, well, hey, no, you know.
It's where justice kind of meets emotions, right? And if their emotions are hurt, you know, that's where we see some really bad decisions made amongst our police officers.
You know, I have a theory that I think oftentimes police officers are asked to do things that are really outside of their what should be their responsibilities, outside of their training.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times, for instance, the kid with autism, I'm not sure you know the specific story, but a kid with autism in Utah, the police showed up and they asked him to comply, and he had severe autism and he didn't comply, and they ended up killing him. But which is a terrible story. But the truth is that if I had gone, and I'm not as tough as a police officer, I'm not brave, I don't have any of that training, but if I see an autistic kid, I know exactly what to do. And you know what I mean? So like, I mean,
they don't have the training. Yeah.
They just don't have the specific training for that. It's not me dogging them. It's just, and I think that a lot of times the police kind of become the catch-all.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do. Let's throw it at the police.
That's very true. Especially here in New Mexico, like, the police and the criminal justice system, they are the number one, like, provider of mental health services.
Right. Oh.
In New Mexico. And that's
our mental health, our boys' school, which is our prison in Indiana for juveniles, is our de facto state mental hospital for kids. And it's really bad. It's a really terrible thing.
Yeah. Like we have mental health court. So like, I don't know if you're familiar with like drug court programs and things like that, but like in drug court, like, you know,
I've been there many times.
Rewards. Oh yes, of course, I forgot. But then mental health court is kind of similar. Like someone will have a felony charge, and they'll be sent to mental health court or treatment court, and then they get therapy. They make sure that they're getting their medications, And if they do well, then possibly they'll get their sentence reduced or their case might be dismissed, things like that, if it was related to their mental health. So,
okay. So
I
let
think
me
things
get
like that are more needed.
Yeah.
craziest case. Can you talk about what is the craziest case you've ever prosecuted?
Craziest.
Unique, you know, something that sticks out, memorable.
Like I've had like a few like small funny ones, you know, like I was telling
I
Tony
like
the
your
other
latest
day.
one that you're doing.
I was telling Tony the other day, I have one that I call it the horny bandits case because it's a shoplifting. It's a shoplifting case, and it's a boyfriend girlfriend. They went to this sex shop here in town.
I'm already laughing.
And they just started like ripping open dildo packages and like shoving them down their pants.
Like,
and then like tried to walk out the door with like 10 dildos, like, you know, just all that stuff. So
I don't even know what to say to this.
I thought you were supposed to put those things in bags.
well,
You know, like bag of.
Yes, I know. Yes, I got you.
So yeah,
you
that
missed
was
the
pretty
most
funny.
obvious hiding places. Anyway,
But I've had like battery by cake, like someone like shoved a piece of cake in your face and then like they call the cops for some reason. I had one with battery with a frozen bag of chicken nuggets. I actually think that one was legit. I think you could really get hurt getting hit with a frozen bag of chicken nuggets.
Sure. Good.
It's like, you know, Homie Don't Play That, like, you know, back the old Saturday night. What is that
Don't
show
play
called?
that. No, that was in Living Color.
In Living Color, yes. Homie Don't Play That. It's like that.
I'm smart.
good job, Tony.
So there's that one. Like people just do really stupid things, especially when they're, you know, drunk.
Yes.
Or high on
right.
something, or methed out, you know.
So yeah, do you have? I mean, I'm sure you look forward to like 4th of July. And
oh yeah, I was on call for, I think it was the 4th of July this year, or it might have been Memorial Day. I can't remember. And we had a case called in where 2 guys were at the lake, and witnesses saw the one guy was just beating the shit out of the other guy, and then like when this guy was like down and passed out on the ground, the aggressor, he like took the victim and pulled him into the water and was like actively trying to drown him, like in front of other people.
Oh my gosh.
And
so that's
then
attempted
all these
murder.
people are like calling the cops. And yeah, although in New Mexico it's weird, like attempted murder does not carry as heavy a sentence as aggravated battery.
What?
So we always charge ag bat instead of attempted murder. I've never seen an attempted murder case.
Well,
because the attempt will bring it down.
Wow.
It's just the way the statute is written. It's weird.
Tell me,
So,
I think that. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, please.
No, I was just curious. Are there? I don't think I can. I don't want to get you in trouble. I was just going to ask you if there was laws that you disagree with.
Oh, you're allowed to say that, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't want to, you know, get in trouble with anything.
Well, hearkening back to part 1 of this episode, you know, my ex was prosecuted through the state of New Mexico and not through the attorney general, not through the federal government. The federal government can get a lot more time on a child pornography charge than we can. New Mexico had changed its laws. So it used to be that if you were charged with possession of child pornography, every single picture you had was a charge.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you had 6,000 pictures, you had 6,000 charges, you know? So instead of doing that, they changed it so that there's just one charge, but they changed the sentencing so that even though it's a 4th degree felony, which is typically 18 months maximum, that 4th degree felony is supposed to be a maximum of 10 years. And then the 3rd degree felony that my ex pled to, which was the distribution of child pornography, that one, usually a 3rd degree felony is a maximum of 3 years, but it's supposed to be 11 years. He was not sentenced properly. He was only sentenced to the 3 years.
Mm.
So I don't think enough prosecutors know about the changes to the sentencing guidelines in that regard. And then also, like, I just think that 3 years for his crime, 3 years of probation is not enough
It
for
doesn't
life.
seem sufficient.
Yeah, like I read the reports and he was looking at pictures of, girls between 7 and 10
Oh no.
with like
Can't do that.
certain features and things like that. And, that should not have been just 3 years of probation. That I
No.
think is a slap on the wrist. And I think my ex and I, we had lived in Kansas, we had lived in Colorado, we had lived in Utah for a brief time. I think if he had gotten caught in any of those 3 states, it would have been a much harsher sentence.
Well, Steve, can someone be actually rehabilitated from this kind of behavior?
Well, I'm certified sex offender treatment specialist, and the stats on someone who, now here's the, if they go through the full program, the stats are very good because you really don't have to like stop them from having sexual arousal. You just have to help them focus it on what's appropriate. I have no idea how that deals with their internal desires. I mean, most people can be trained, hey, don't slap that, don't try to touch that girl that you're not supposed to. Most people can be trained to not do that. But I don't realistically know if that changes the desire to touch who you're not supposed to, or in this case, look at those kind of things.
And
I saw this really interesting documentary where I think it was in California. They gave the inmates in the sex offender unit an option where they could have parole if they went through a voluntary chemical castration.
Ooh.
And a lot of them opted to do it. And they said that it took away their desire to, touch kids like altogether. But they would have been in jail like the rest of their lives.
Right. Sure.
So yeah, it was very interesting.
Wow. I'm assuming that there must have been some early childhood trauma with him.
So with my ex, the only thing that I know about is that I know that he was exposed to pornography very young, like about 5 years old. And that it was kind of a constant thing. And then once his family got the internet, it kind of blew up from there. And he had been addicted to pornography for a very long time, probably since he was about 11 or 12. And it's kind of, pornography is a little bit like a drug, it's once you get used to a certain level, you no longer get high anymore.
Well, let's go to our porn expert, Steve. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I agree with what she's saying. The thing we have to be careful about, and this is not what you were saying, Verily, this goes more to Tony's question, is that, most people who are exposed to pornography at a young age or see lots and lots of porn don't end up getting into kiddie porn.
Yeah. And I agree with that too.
So it's not that it can't be a factor. It's just, the vast majority of people who are sexually abused don't become molesters. The vast majority of people who are beaten as children don't grow up to be sadistic. So there's something different about the people who do.
Oh, like serial killers. It's like this almost formula. It's like, it's horrific things that have to happen. It's this perfect storm of events.
But even you're right. But even then, you still couldn't guarantee that, not that you'd want to, but you couldn't guarantee they'd become a serial killer.
Right. You can't just come up with a formula and say, I'm going to make this kid a serial killer one day. And if I do this, this, and this.
Verily, one of the things I've been surprised at in my own profession is how much I like the attorneys that I've worked with.
Aww.
Well, I mean, my opinion of attorneys going into my profession was, the Book of Mormon says that attorneys make the laws and then they charge people to have to keep the laws that they themselves made. And I thought that was a pretty accurate description. But like when I go in and I work with DAs and assistant DAs and DCS attorneys, and these are, and public defenders, these are people who are not, billing $300 an hour.
No.
They're making much less money than that. And they are really helping people who, I mean, I would argue that the DA is that the, I mean, not to be a law and order, but that the criminal, that the courts are more important for maintaining law and order than the police.
Yeah.
I mean, because of, like you said, one of the things I like the best is when my clients end up in a diversion program.
Oh yeah, I love diversion.
Now I'm not trying to make fun of you, Tony. Are you aware of what that is?
Oh my gosh.
Have
No.
you completed your diversion, Tony?
Well, for anybody who doesn't know, you just, you have to do like therapy or anger management or whatever.
Right. It's still a plea, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love that.
In New Mexico, at least, pre-prosecution diversion is, there's a few ways we can do it, but we have an actual, program. The person who's going into the program, they have to write a statement admitting their guilt of what they've done. Then they have to, check in with the pre-prosecution diversion. It's kind of like probation. Only
I have all those letters pre-written. I just have them ready to go.
Just ready to go.
Yeah. I practice them. I just want them to sound really good by the time I get to use them.
But they check in with their diversion person and all this stuff. And then if they work the program and they do everything they're supposed to do, whatever therapies or what have you, then their case is dismissed before it's even filed. So we just like never file it. So they don't have a conviction. They don't have anything on their record. But we only give pre-prosecution diversion to like first-time non-violent felony offenders.
Gotcha. Because my follow-up question was going to be like, how often do you see it? And that seems like sometimes everyone seems to roll their eyes when clearly guilty people plead not guilty. And so you think that that's the common thing, that everyone pleads not I didn't do it.
Well, here, people make a big deal out of that, and it's not a big deal. Like whenever there's a high profile murder case or whatever,
like
and
these
it's
mass
like
shootings,
obvious,
these mass shooting people, they're pleading not guilty. Yeah.
Everyone's like, and they pled not guilty. Oh my gosh. But that is a standard, like when you're arraigned on a felony, that is the standard plea. Everybody pleads not guilty at first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have never seen an arraignment someone say, I'm guilty. Usually if they come in and say they want to plead guilty, the judge will talk them out of it and be like, no, you need to talk to an attorney first before you make that plea. So let's just put you not guilty right now.
Gotcha.
And then you talk to an attorney. So that is what everybody does. They make a big deal of it on the news, but it's not at all like a big deal. It's very standard procedure.
Verily, one of the things, because you mentioned working with domestic battery cases now, one of the opinions that I have that I don't typically share because it really gets people very angry is how frustrated I get with the victims in these cases, because I work with the children. My 85 to 90% of my clients are children, and after doing this for a number of years, my perception is that mom and dad are doing whatever nonsense they're doing. Neither one cares enough about the kid to get the kid out of the situation. And so the kids end up, and so like I've learned to just not say anything, but when they bring up how, and batterers are bad, they're very, very bad. But I don't say anything about the other side, which is that I'm not trying to blame the victim, but when the victim keeps going back and refuses services because they don't want to go to a shelter, and not once, but over and over and over again, I probably have the same level of frustration with the victims as I do with the batterers because of that, because of the way the children are the ones who are suffering.
Yeah, I agree. Like the victims can be very frustrating to deal with, and I deal with victims all day, but when you can actually help one of them, that's what makes my job worth it. Like because like I said, about 98% of the cases that I prosecute are going to go away because the victim is not cooperative. And it does bother me a lot, especially when there are kids involved. Like I'll have cases where the kids are the ones that call the police, You know, the kids are like pulling on the dad and being like, don't punch mommy, you know, and that kind of stuff just tears you up. Like you can't like read that in a police report and, you know, not feel empathy for that kid and just the horrible situation that they live in, and the fact that they are going to remember that event the rest of their lives. And that really bothers me. And you know, my second marriage, I didn't talk about a lot about that in the part one. My second marriage, I was never physically abused, and like I said before, he is a very good dad, but he was very emotionally abusive to me. And but there's, you know, a thing that I learned about, and I'm sure Steve knows, called trauma bonding. And when you go through abuse,
that really describes our relationship, Steve and I.
Yes,
the trauma bond. But
no, but it's a very real thing.
Yeah, it's very real, and that's what people don't understand who have never been abused, is that you feel bonded to this person in such a strong way because of the trauma that you've gone through, that they've put you through. And that sounds weird to say, but even with the emotional abuse, I experienced it. I had a very hard time leaving my second ex, and I had a very hard time staying away from him once I left.
You know, I've had people in my office weeping because their molester wouldn't talk to him anymore, because their molester got in trouble for having, because of course normally there's no contact, and they've, you know, so, and I've had them cry, why won't he won't even talk to me.
Doesn't that have something to do with, it's, again, it doesn't go back to childhood. So like, let's say you had a very emotionally abusive father, and he comes in, gets off, you know, home from work, and he screams and yells for nothing. And then you feel this relief once he's done screaming, and that happens over and over and over again. So it's the relief, that feeling of euphoria, that when it's done,
well, that certainly has to be part of it.
You know, that relief screws up the wiring in your brain, and you're saying that kind of abuse is actually good feeling.
Yeah, like with my ex, I felt like I couldn't leave, even though I was an adult. I had a vehicle, I could drive. Like I felt stuck, like I couldn't leave that person. Almost like I needed permission or something. And then when I left, and he had a different reaction than I was expecting. When I left, I was expecting him to be very angry. And then he was very sad and very hurt and just crying and leaving me these messages on the phone where he's weeping and begging me to come back and stuff. And that was not the reaction that I expected. And that like tore me up inside, because I felt just like this very powerful like urge to go back to him because he was sad, and because I had this like trauma bond with him. So I think like going through that experience has given me a lot more empathy for the victims, because, you know, like I said before, it's very hard to leave an abusive relationship. Your money is entangled, your kids are entangled. A lot of women especially don't have the capacity to take care of themselves. You know, they don't have a job that can support them and their kids. And or I've seen a lot of this as well, where the abuser takes care of the kids during the day while the woman works. Right. And if the abuser's gone, she has no one to watch the kids. She loses her babysitter, and so then she can't work. So either situation, like it's very hard for these people to get out of that situation. I think like I've seen a lot of women in divorce pages and stuff like that on Facebook, you know, LDS divorce pages in the church, who have said things like, oh, I'm going back to school. I wish I had done my school earlier and stuff like that. You know, I grew up in an era of the church with President Hinckley. He was the prophet of the church at one time. And he was very adamant, like, get as much education as you can. You know, go to school, get good grades, all these different things all the time.
I thought though he was focusing on the men though.
No, he focused on everyone.
Again, as a joke. I'm sorry.
Oh,
not funny, Tony. But like, I took that to heart, you know, and I felt very strongly that I needed to get an education, and I feel like, you know, God knew what was going to happen to me in my life and prepared a way for me to be able to take care of myself through that education. And I've always been very, very grateful that I was able to get that done before I had kids and before all this stuff happened to me, because I've heard of other women who have like 5 or 6 kids, and then their husband got arrested for child pornography too. But they have no job, no skills, no education, and like 6 kids to support. And because at first, when my ex got arrested, I thought it was like the worst thing that had ever happened to anyone. And then when I heard about, you know, some of these other cases, I was like, well, I guess mine's not that bad. You know, like,
did you ever have like a popping of the Mormon bubble, whether it was as you were becoming, you know, a DA, or at some point, you know, did that happen? Or did you have it did you even have it in the first place?
Like, I don't know. I've never like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever like subscribed, I guess, to the Mormon bubble idea, even though I grew up in Orem, Utah, which is the bubble. At one point in law school, I clerked for a judge in Utah, and he was a criminal judge. So I was watching court one day, and this kid came in to be sentenced, and he was a kid that I grew up with.
Oh.
And he had stolen some cars, and he had gone on a mission, like the whole thing. And his lawyer even brought that up as like a reason why he should be treated with leniency. I was like, he should be treated worse. Like, he knows better. But
true.
But yeah, they gave him 5 years. 5 years of DLC.
That doesn't seem that bad.
Well, in New Mexico, he wouldn't get nearly that. I was like,
oh,
that's
that was a lot then. Well, I can't remember if it was Steve or somebody else who was also a therapist. I think they were an intake therapist. And Steve, didn't you describe this like where there was things that you had to go through as you're learning things for the first time? There's struggles, the things that you couldn't even imagine dealing with. And was it you or somebody else?
Yeah, I don't remember having that conversation with you. I mean, it's certainly true. You know, when you grow up, I mean, I didn't grow up in a particularly happy home. My parents got divorced when I was 13. And at the time I was very sad about it, but looking back, it was really great because they hated each other. But my mission was probably the first time I was exposed to people. Well, okay. So I remember one time.
No, it was the first time you exposed yourself to people.
One time when I was about 13.
You got diversion program though. So
yes,
okay.
I was doing, my dad had me working at you know how the fair always comes through town? My dad
I completely forgot. Didn't you go on your mission in New Mexico?
No, Arizona.
Oh, Arizona.
Oh.
But I was I was working at this fair. My dad he was one of the people in charge of it. So, you know, and I was doing like cleanup and such. And one of the adult women there was supposed to give me a ride home, and she smoked marijuana. And I was so indignant, and I lectured her about how bad it was. And I refused to drive with her. And I said, I am walking home. I said, if you smoke marijuana, I'd been through health class. It stays in your system for 30 days. And she's like, Steve, she goes, I smoke all the time. This is nothing. And I go, I don't even care. I'm not getting in the car with you. I was very proud of myself. And I walked home, and I never told my dad because I'm not a rat. She showed up the next day, and I think she thought she was going to get fired. And I just said, I never said anything. So, but it was on my mission. It was the first time I like the idea of people really using drugs. And there was this, I remember this one Latina who, you know, missionaries don't get crushes, but whatever the equivalent to that is for a missionary. I mean, she was just beautiful. And she apparently, and again, I'm very young. She was into crack.
Appreciation from afar.
She was into crack.
She was into crack. And she was laying the missionaries in to teach her. Of course, she never got baptized or anything, but like I had never been around anybody in that situation.
Wow.
I thought it was very unusual, which is like the dark web. I mean, honestly, verily, I guess I knew that there was a dark web, but the idea that people get on it and do things.
I wouldn't even know how to get on it.
You have to download a special software.
No, we're not doing it. We're not.
No, let's not. Listen.
I didn't know about the dark web at all when my ex got arrested. Since then, I've like heard some podcasts and stuff, you know, because I'm into true crime. Like that's one of the
Sure.
reasons I went into criminal law.
So
Like I've always been into it, but like where I've listened to a few podcasts where the dark web was involved, and that's how I kind of got more like accustomed, like familiar with it, I guess. But there was one case, a murder case, where this guy was going on the dark web to try to find someone to kill his wife. And
wow.
there are people out there on
Oh,
the dark
sure.
web. You can, you know, hire hitmen, you can buy guns, you can buy drugs, you can buy child porn, like, you know, all this illegal stuff is on there.
So the dark web, the basic though is that it's supposed to be untraceable. It's like a computer
Yeah.
running through a computer running through a computer, and you just can't trace the source, right? That's what it's
Yeah.
supposed to be, right?
Yeah. And then like the police, when they were watching my ex, they knew kind of the I guess sites that people would go to get these pictures, and then they would find whoever was accessing them and be able to get their IP address, and that's how they busted him. But they watched him for probably like 2 months before they raided our house.
What's your favorite law show or movie
or
Oh.
podcast, any of that? What's your favorite?
Well, my favorite
Wait, what's your
scene of
favorite
a-
book on law? Let's look.
Well, I
Let's get
actually
Steve's
went-
real attention.
I don't
I
think
actually went to law school because I read A Time to Kill by John
I was
Grisham.
about to say John Grisham.
Yeah.
Everything John Grisham does about the law makes you want to be a lawyer.
Yeah, like when I read that book, I was really intrigued by the mental chess game between the lawyers. And I had never thought about going to law school ever. And then when I read that book, I was like, you know what? I love crime. Like I love true crime stuff. I love, you know, justice.
Bobby is really missing out. She is really missing out on this section. I feel really bad that she's not here. She is a true crime podcast junkie.
Oh, I love true crime podcasts. I love 48 Hours, obviously. But there's one from Australia called Case File that's really good. They've even done some New Mexico cases that I was familiar
these
with.
are
So that was
shows
kind of cool.
More not reality, obviously, but they're real. You like the real stuff.
Yes.
What about like the fake Hollywood stuff? Like what's
Oh, I can't stand the fake Hollywood stuff,
any of it?
Well, there's some. Like, have you ever seen the new True Grit?
Yes, you mean the movie?
Yeah, the movie.
The John Wayne classic?
Well, the one with Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, it's horrible.
No, I don't want to upset Tony,
so
but I
much
read
better.
the book True Grit and really liked
I
it.
read the book True Grit. Blah blah blah.
See, I knew it. It make him mad.
No, I love the original versus the new one by far.
Really, I tried to watch the original and it was like so cheesy, but I'll try it again. But like, I loved the new one, but I love the courtroom scene in that because it is very accurate
Yes.
to how an actual trial goes. Like the prosecutor is direct examining Rooster Cogburn, and the defense attorney is like spouting off, you know, objections, and they're proper objections. Like, you know, it's very good.
The corruption that existed with a judge back in the day.
Oh yeah.
It had to have been massive.
Oh yeah, there's still corruption.
Well, of course there's still corruption. I mean, but it just blows my mind.
Barely. So you are an assistant DA.
Yeah.
What kind of career ambitions do you have?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I specifically did not ask
that. So I waffle back and forth because before I was an assistant, before I came back to the DA's office, I kind of fell backwards into this gig where I was the deputy director of workers' compensation for the state of New Mexico. And then I became the acting director of that state agency. So I was running the agency. There was the main office in Albuquerque. There were 6 satellite offices all over the state. And I supervised like 120 people. And there were judges and mediators and nurses and safety people and all kinds of different, you know, professionals, economists, all kinds of things. And I really liked that job. It was very interesting. It was very different every day. I was appointed by the governor, so I had to go to like cabinet meetings and things like that.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was really cool. Eventually, you know, the governor switched hands, and they eventually like figured out that I was appointed by the last governor, so they, you know, kicked me out.
Yes.
But
Always happens.
yeah, so I've actually thought about going back to management because I enjoyed it so much. But if I stay on the trial attorney path, which, you know, I just finished a master's of laws in trial advocacy this last May. My ambition was to eventually work for a U.S. attorney's office. So, but the problem with it, for me at least, is that when you work for the U.S. attorney's office, you are dealing with the worst of the worst. You're prosecuting the cartel, the mafia, gangs, Hell's Angels, you know, things like that. And there have been circumstances in the past where U.S. attorneys have been targeted, or their families have been targeted by those people. And I'm not willing to risk my kids. So like, I don't want to take a job like that until they're at least grown and gone.
Sure.
Well, that's what got real with meeting you, was that your name on Mutual was just V. Just the letter V.
Yeah. And on Facebook, it's V, but it's VE. Because I don't want defendants. My name is unusual, and I don't want defendants here to be able to find me on social media.
Now they know.
It happens.
You just told them.
Oh, I know. Now the cat's out of the bag. For a while, I changed it completely to like something totally different, and everyone was like, "Who is this?" And so it was just a mess.
Have you ever had threats?
I've had a few people that I'm like, this person might actually want to hurt me. But I've never been threatened per se, I guess. I had a guy recently that like, and my supervisor told me, he's like, you can't take it personally. You can't take it personally. He's like, the people that get threats and stuff are the ones that take it personally. He's like, if you just do your job and the defendant knows you're doing your job, then, you know, they're not going to take that personally. But he's like, if you get too heated about it, because I get very passionate about certain things. He was like, if you get too heated about it, then those are the people that actually get threats and actually put themselves in harm's way. And so I've tried to take that, you know, to heart, because this particular case really bothered me a lot. Like, it came to me as a misdemeanor. It was battery of household member. The guy had punched his girlfriend in the face like a couple of times. And then when she came to our office, she gave us all these medical records and stuff showing that he had actually like broken the bone in her face, like
Holy cow.
And had messed up her teeth and like broken her jaw in like a certain place. And so because of the extent of the injuries, I was able to amend the criminal complaint and make it a felony. And this guy is just the biggest asshole I've ever met. Like, we did a preliminary hearing on him, and I filed a motion. In New Mexico, if you want to hold somebody because they're dangerous, you have to file a special motion to do that. And so I'd filed this motion on him because I was like, he is still kind of threatening her. She says she's afraid of him, all this different stuff. So she came and testified at that hearing, for his preliminary hearing and for this dangerousness hearing. And then after she testified, and she was a very good witness, like, he got on the stand and testified. Before court, she had told me that he had been contacting her, and she played me some of the messages, and the messages were like, bitch, you better drop these charges, you know, very angry, very just awful. And so he got on the stand, and his attorney asked him if he had contacted the victim since the incident, and he said no.
Oh, so
and I was
door.
like, I got you now, buddy. I got you. Because like, I couldn't use those messages before because I hadn't disclosed them to the defense, but they opened the door.
They brought it up. Yeah.
They brought it up. And so I was
just
able
like
to,
when Amber Hood, sorry, go ahead.
When I cross-examined him, I was like, so you haven't contacted her at all? He's like, no, no, da da da. And I was like, is this you?
Boom.
Played a message. Is this you? Is this you? Like, and he had a very
That must have been
distinct
so
voice.
satisfying.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Like, there's just some moments in court that are just so beautiful. They fill you with adrenaline and happiness. That was one. His face was just so angry and livid. And eventually he just started denying. He's like, no, that's not me. But his voice is so distinct. It was very obvious it was him.
Did you ever see the video from Michigan? You know, it was during COVID where everyone was doing court, you know, Zoom. And it was the same thing, same kind of situation, but the ex-boyfriend was in the house. Did you see that?
I saw that video. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah,
Her eyes she was like trying shifting. To, you know, yeah, she was, you know, getting direct questions, and she's just like, she didn't even want to answer it, you know.
Yeah, it is so scary for victims. Like, the victims that are brave enough to move forward with the trial, you know, I am just in awe of them, really, because they go through so much crap. They go through so much crap to take a case to trial. They might get threats like that.
Oh, his family will call him.
Yeah, their family, the defendant's family will threaten them. They usually have to wait a very long time. Like, a trial, you know, can take, it'll be like 18 months or 2 years before it will go to trial. And so they've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And then they have to get up on the stand, face their accuser, point him out and identify him in court. And, you know, and then they have to hope that a jury believes them. And sometimes they don't. You know, I've had a few cases recently where we lost and the victim was like devastated, you know, that they did all this work, they came all this way, and then the guy got away with it.
I can imagine.
You know, and it's just, it really is hard for me too, because like, I have a very strong sense of justice. So I'm like, that's not just because he got away. You know, the thing that I like about my job is that I get to do justice. So if that means that I feel like someone needs a second chance, or if I think the victim is full of crap or something like that, I can kind of do what I want with that. Like, I can offer them PPD, or I can offer them do some anger management. I'll dismiss your case or whatever. But like, the defense attorney's job is not justice. It is get my guy off or get him the best deal possible.
Yes,
and that's their job, you know. They're just doing their job. But it's hard for me because I'm like, it's not fair, you know.
I have had defense attorneys argue with me about whether or not their clients were mentally ill because they thought it was better for them not to be. And I'd be like, you really don't want your client to get help?
Right.
You know, I'm not trying to put him in jail.
Yeah, so some defense attorneys, they don't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
They're just trying to get this one case dismissed, where I'm like, well, but if this guy gets off on this case, he's just going to be back here in a couple of weeks. Like,
makes him more money.
Yeah. Well, the public defenders, they don't make
jack
anything.
Well, I'm just saying, it's revolving. They don't. Yeah.
Hey, V.
Yeah.
So we are about out of time. Is that what you were going to say, Tony?
Yeah, I was getting to that point. Yeah.
I have got to tell you, this has been a delight. And I'd like to work out something where you could come back again and maybe talk about some of those true crime stories.
I had the same exact thoughts.
Oh,
yes.
good.
Yeah.
And maybe talk about some of those true crime stories. You know, we give you a little bit of time to
True Crime Tuesday.
Well,
that
maybe
would
not.
Be awesome.
Yes.
And we could eat tacos.
2 of them, 2 for 2. Okay. Well, V, again, it has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh,
is there anything, I just want to give you a chance to, is there anything else that you would like with the few minutes that we have to promote anything, talk about anything? I know I'm walking away with a lot of things that I've appreciate from everything you've shared. I would just say really quickly, I think that victims are very brave to come up and to get out of those abusive situations. And that's what I'm taking away from this.
I think one of the things that I've noticed a lot on some of these divorce pages and things that I follow on Facebook is that there's a lot of people, both men and women, who don't have a lot of knowledge about the legal system. We're
Mm-hmm.
going through a divorce, or, you know, going through a custody thing, or whatever, and they don't know where to turn for help, and they can't afford a lawyer. And so I think I just want to plug that there are a lot of resources out there. Like, it depends on the state that you live in, but, you know, most law schools, if there's a law school near you, most law schools have a law clinic, and those attorneys, you know, they're third year lawyers, they're third year law students, and they're being supervised by attorneys. And they'll take cases for free. Legal Aid takes cases for free. There's the J. Reuben Clark Law Society, which is the LDS, the Mormon Law Society, and quite often members of the Law Society will take cases either pro bono, which is free, or at a reduced rate. I know in Tony's state in Michigan, they have a program for people where if you're not indigent enough to get a free lawyer, you might be able to qualify to get a reduced price lawyer, which is for like $75 an hour, which for a lawyer is, you know, a very good price.
That's really good.
And in my state, they have legal clinics, like usually I think in Albuquerque they do them once a month, where people can come with any kind of question that they have, whether it be foreclosure, landlord tenant, divorce, you know, things like that, and talk to a lawyer for free for like 15 minutes or, you know, half an hour or whatever. And so there are a lot of resources out there. You can call your local bar. I know even I've had stake presidents come to me, like, and ask me legal questions, or ask me if I know lawyers that
How can I
handle
get
certain
away with a
things.
crime? Is that what they're asking you?
No, like sometimes they'll have someone who's either going through it. It's usually divorce. I know a lot of LDS lawyers don't do family law on purpose,
Really?
because they don't want to be hit up every time someone needs a divorce.
Oh,
They don't want
sure.
to. Yeah.
It's like a
Sure.
guy that owns a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know a lot of LDS lawyers avoid that altogether. But I'll have stake presidents and bishops and stuff call me and be like, "You're the only lawyer in our stake. Who would you recommend for this or whatever?" And I'll give referrals and things like that.
The whole court system is very intimidating.
Yeah, and especially like if you're not in it day in and day out, like an attorney is.
You two are pros. Both of you are.
Well, I'm semi-pro at best. I will say that we needed an attorney for a civil matter, and without her, we wouldn't have been able to take even the first step correctly. I would think in a criminal matter, it'd be even much more so important.
Oh yeah. Well, in a criminal matter, at least you have a constitutional right to a lawyer. In most states, that right attaches if you're facing any jail time. So if you're facing a charge that has any jail time, you have the right to a lawyer. Although when I was in Utah, it was like 6 months or something. You had to be facing up to 6 months.
Utah's messed up.
If you were facing 3 months, it's like tough luck. Like hire your own lawyer or like handle it on your own.
I was going to bring up when they did away with truancy, which was recent. I'm just going to not, maybe another episode.
Well, again, V, I hope that we can work out something where you could come back once a month or so. And I just think you have or maybe that's too often. I don't mean to commit you in that way, but where you could come back again. There's so much that I feel like you have going on, and it's a very
Girl,
cool
you got a lot going on.
A lot of going on.
See how that changes from the way Steve said it and the way I said it? See, I'm
Yeah.
single. I can say those things. Steve isn't. He can't say those things.
True. It's all true.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time, being, very vulnerable. And I appreciate that. You mentioned about being a little nervous. You did amazing.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you.
It was really good. Really, really good. So as always, please like and subscribe the channel, comment. I will, just as a warning, when we end the recording, don't just leave, because sometimes we do talk afterwards. Okay. Bobby always just leaves. So we'll talk about things and how things went. But thank you so much. And thank you for watching Two Fat Dads. Bye.
Bye.